We are going to pick up this morning in Genesis chapter 23, and we will see, as we are coming to a close in Abraham's life, that his earthly course is finishing in such a way that we've seen this arc, right? We've noticed for the past couple of months, we've been considering Abraham, that there's been this arc, and this arc starts with the call to Abraham, a man who is a pagan, who is in a pagan land, a pagan family, and God comes to him just like he does to any of his people, and he knocks on the door of Abraham's heart, and he calls him, and he takes him, and he knows him by name. Right, and so Abraham has been on this arc of obedience, and it has fluctuated wildly at times. Right, he's done some terrible things. Honestly, some terrible things. He's done foolish things. He's done terrible things. But he has kind of come to this point in his sanctification, right, his growing in holiness, where he has kind of hit a stride. So he's hit a stride where he is trusting God, and this is such a great place for any of us to be. And for Abraham, it's interesting that he's in his 100s when this happens. Thankfully, if you're in this room breathing right now, you have an opportunity to beat Abraham on the obedience train. But this morning we will look at Sarah and the end of her earthly course. And as we consider Sarah this morning, we will be thinking about a sensitive topic, very close in our own church family right now. A death was suffered very recently to a family member of a dear brother. And so this is very, very present and real. And maybe for some of you, a death has occurred in the past, and this kind of draws into your mind some thoughts of loss. And I would direct you this morning to consider that the presence of death in Genesis, the presence of death in this book, is not there ultimately to just remind us of how awful things are in a fallen world, but it is ultimately for those who are the people of God to take our attention and to focus it on the God who makes promises. And the God who makes promises of redemption, the God who makes promises of restoration, the God who makes promises of resurrection, right? There's a reason why we find Sarah being buried. All right, there's a reason why we have Joseph, when we get to the end of Genesis, who instructs his brothers, hey, when you guys leave this place, you're going to leave this place, you're going to leave Egypt. I want you to take my bones up with you, because there's a hope. There's a hope that's attached to the Christian experience. There's a hope that's attached to those who look to this God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who's made promises fulfilled in Christ, to say that, yes, there is a hope and be fulfilled in a new heavens and a new earth. That is on the radar here, okay? You will see this as we proceed throughout Genesis. As I've mentioned before, so many very foundational truths about the Christian life, about just doctrine as a whole, are laid for us in Genesis. And here we'll see the hope of a resurrection. So I'll read Genesis 23 for you. And just I want you to track what's happening here. Don't treat this just as a record of events, okay? It's kind of dry if we're just treating it like a record of events. This is Abraham kind of haggling with some people who have land, okay? But I want you to be thinking everything you know about Abraham to this point, everything you know about him, where he has trusted, but he's wrestled, and he's gone, and he's come back. Please consider this as I read Genesis 23 for us. Sarah lived 127 years. These were the years of the life of Sarah. And Sarah died at Kiriath Arba, that is Hebron, in the land of Canaan. And Abraham went in to mourn for Sarah and to weep for her. And Abraham rose up from before his dead and said to the Hittites, I'm a sojourner and foreigner among you. Now please keep this in mind, all right? Abraham is declaring this. He's a sojourner, he's a foreigner among them. And yet this is the land that God has promised to him. Give me property among you for a burying place, that I may bury my dead out of my sight. The Hittites answered Abraham, Hear us, my lord, you are a prince of God among us. Bury your dead in the choicest of our tombs. None of us will withhold from you his tomb to hinder you from burying your dead. Abraham rose and bowed to the Hittites, the people of the land, and he said to them, If you are willing that I should bury my dead out of my sight, hear me and entreat for me Ephron, the son of Zohar, that he may give me the cave of Machpelah, which he owns. It is at the end of his field. For the full price, let him give it to me in your presence as property for a burying place. Now Ephron was sitting among the Hittites. And Ephron the Hittite answered Abraham in the hearing of the Hittites, of all who went in at the gate of this city. No, my lord, hear me. I give you the field, and I give you the cave that is in it. In the sight of the sons of my people, I give it to you. Bury your dead. Then Abraham bowed down before the people of the land, and he said to Ephron in the hearing of the people of the land, But if you will, hear me. I give the price of the field. Accept it from me, that I may bury my dead there. Ephron answered Abraham, my lord, listen to me. A piece of land worth 400 shekels of silver, what is that between you and me? Bury your dead. Abraham listened to Ephron, and Abraham weighed out for Ephron the silver that he had named in the hearing of the Hittites, 400 shekels of silver according to the weights current among the merchants. So the field of Ephron in Machpelah, which was to the east of Mamre, the field with the cave that was in it, and all the trees that were in the field throughout its whole area was made over to Abraham as a possession in the presence of the Hittites before all who went in at the gate of his city. After this, Abraham buried Sarah, his wife, in the cave of the field of Machpelah, east of Mamre, that is Hebron, in the land of Canaan. The field and the cave that is in it were made over to Abraham as property for a burying place by the Hittites. So that is a record of Sarah's death and her burial, effectively, right? He is buying a piece of land here. This piece of land will later on house Abraham and Isaac. It will house family members of Abraham going down through the ages. But I want to help you understand that this land is not the point, right? This burying place is not the point. There is, to this day, in this plot of land, at least what people believe to be this plot of land, there's a mosque that's been erected over this hundreds of years ago. It's a place where people are venerating the bodies that are buried there. Whether or not they are Abraham's or Sarah's is beside the point, because if we understand what's happening here, we're seeing that Abraham is not simply looking to a place to bury his wife. He is looking to what is on the other side of that burial, right? There's a promise, and it's a promise is not just about this piece of land. And I hope that as we're going through Genesis, you're seeing that God is not interested in just giving a real estate deal to Abraham and his descendants. Right, that's not what's happening here. There is much more going on, and as we go later this morning, we'll see how the author of Hebrews helps us kind of turn this for us to understand with some greater clarity. But your big idea for the morning, I think, helpful for you to take away. Sarah's death and burial show that the hope of God's people is not found in a fallen world, but in the fulfillment of his guarantee to be their God in a land of promise. So, It is a sad reality that this morning there are many people who are gathering in the name of Jesus who are believing that the greatest blessing that Jesus gives is a happy, fulfilled life here and now. That the measure of God's love for people can be found in whether or not you have what you want. And if you don't have what you want, then that's a sure sign that you've done something to anger God. If you are missing out, if you missed the promotion, then obviously there's hidden sin in your life and all these types of things. There's a sad reality. There are many people who are meeting this morning who are hearing that. There are many people who are meeting this morning in the name of Jesus who are simply basically authorizing a lifestyle that says whatever earthly good you can gather for yourself, it's great. And Jesus is he's all about that. And the bonus is you get to go to heaven. Okay? Now, if we peel back the layers to what we saw in the beginning, Genesis chapters 1 and 2, we see that the great blessing that was forfeited by our first parents was not having a nice time. The great blessing that was forfeited by our first parents was the blessing of living in the presence of God free from sin. So anybody who gathers this morning in the name of Jesus, who is not addressing the reality that sin is the biggest problem and restoration and reconciliation with God is the greatest blessing, is completely missing the point. Which is why I would help you see this morning that Abraham and Sarah are not looking to just, okay, we had a good life, now we've got a nice little tomb in a land that our descendants are going to have, and they'll put our name all over it. That's not what's happening here. The real hope of God's people, not found here, but in the fulfillment of God's guarantee to be our God in a land of promise. So, a hopeless world. Wow, how encouraging. Verses 1 through 4, again. Sarah lived 127 years. These were the years of the life of Sarah. And Sarah died at Kiriath Arba, that is Hebron, in the land of Canaan. And Abraham went in to mourn for Sarah and to weep for her. And Abraham rose up from before his dead and said to the Hittites, I am a sojourner and foreigner among you. Give me property among you for a burying place, that I may bury my dead out of my sight. So the word dead or death occurs several times here, which should kind of key us in on something, that what is being discussed here, what's being introduced here in Genesis chapter 23 is an intrusion. It is an intrusion. Because if we if we keep our eyes on the big picture of Genesis, what is the intruder that comes in when sin enters the world is death. So death is unnatural. Okay? Don't ever buy into a worldview that says death is a process that actually helps improve biological species. It doesn't help anything. Death is terrible. Death is awful. And a worldview that suggests that death is just a natural part of life. It is a natural part of a fallen world, but it's not a good thing. It's not a normal thing. It's not something that we just look at and say, well, whatever will be, will be. That's not what's happening for us in Scripture. We're seeing that death intrudes. Death creates problems. So however many years might be had in this present world. And Sarah had more than any of us, right? I don't think any of us are going to live to 127. Right? It just doesn't happen. However many years might be had in this present world, it's fallenness. So the fallenness of this present world, it guarantees the same outcome for Sarah, Abraham, and everyone in death. Right? Statistically, 10 out of 10 people die. Genesis 5, 1 through 31. If you think reading chapter 23 was a lot, I'm going to read 5 for you, in part because I skipped this back when we were between Genesis 4 and 6. And I told you at the time, I was like, well, this is just a record of genealogies and death. But I want you to pay attention as I read through this, the names of these people. I want you to pay attention to the conclusion of each of their lives, because if we consider what the promise is in Genesis 2 regarding seeking the place of God, reaching out and seeking his prerogative to establish for ourselves what is right and what is wrong, we find the promise that the day you do that, you are going to die. Completely foreign, completely unknown in the world prior to sin entering. And then Genesis chapter 5, we have chapter 4, we have Cain and Abel. Cain slays his brother. And then we have chapter 5. So if we think death is really personal in chapter 4, here's chapter 5. And I want you to think about this phrase that shows up. And I'll try to divide it for you so you see it. This is the book of the generations of Adam. When God created man, he made him in the likeness of God. Male and female, he created them. And he blessed them and named them man when they were created. When Adam had lived 130 years, he fathered a son in his own likeness after his image and named him Seth. The days of Adam, after he fathered Seth, were 800 years. And he had other sons and daughters. Thus all the days that Adam lived were 930 years, and he died. When Seth had lived 105 years, he fathered Enosh. Seth lived after he fathered Enosh 807 years, and had other sons and daughters. Thus all the days of Seth were 912 years, and he died. When Enosh had lived 90 years, he fathered Kenan. Enosh lived after he fathered Kenan 815 years, and had other sons and daughters. Thus all the days of Enosh were 905 years, and he died. When Kenan had lived 70 years, he fathered Mahalalel. Kenan lived after he fathered Mahalalel 840 years, and had other sons and daughters. Thus all the days of Kenan were 910 years, and he died. When Mahalalel had lived 65 years, he fathered Jared. Mahalalel lived after he fathered Jared 830 years, and had other sons and daughters. Thus all the days of Mahalalel were 895 years, and he died. When Jared had lived 162 years, he fathered Enoch. Jared lived after he fathered Enoch 800 years, and had other sons and daughters. Thus all the days of Jared were 962 years, and he died. When Enoch had lived 65 years, he fathered Methuselah. Enoch walked with God after he fathered Methuselah 300 years, and had other sons and daughters. Thus all the days of Enoch were 365 years. Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. Now, we're not going to focus on this here, but there is something to note. Whether this is what we would say like a direct assumption, this happens with Elijah, where Enoch is taken apart from death, or whether this is just a statement that Moses makes regarding his particular relationship with God, where the death that Enoch occurs is not the same type of death because Enoch walked with God. Either way, we're saying there's a difference in Enoch's life because Enoch walked with God. When Methuselah had lived 187 years, he fathered Lamech. Methuselah lived after he fathered Lamech 782 years, and had other sons and daughters. Thus all the days of Methuselah were 969 years, and he died. When Lamech had lived 182 years, he fathered a son and called his name Noah. saying, out of the ground that the Lord has cursed, this one shall bring us relief from our work and from the painful toil of our hands. Lamech lived after he fathered Noah 595 years and had other sons and daughters. Thus all the days of Lamech were 777 years, and he died. So again, none of us can conceive of a world where there is no death. None of us can conceive of it. None of us can sit down and think like, oh, this is what it would be. Because death is it's always hanging around the corner. It's always hanging around. It's why you look both ways when you cross the street. Right? You look and you think, okay, I don't want to be smacked by a bus. So I look both ways because I don't want to be smacked by a bus. Because what is the other side of being smacked by a bus? It's death. And so we're aware of the fact that death is present, that it is around us, okay? And how hard we try to do this is I think we're probably the pinnacle of world history as a culture of peoples who have decided we want to fool ourselves into believing that death is not real, that death can be avoided perpetually, right? But the reality is it can't be done. This is a fallen world. And because the wages of sin is death, all of us feel the impending reality of our own mortality. We feel it. It's in our hearts. We realize this isn't going to last forever. And the different ways that people deal with that, people may say, well, let's make the best of what you have. Okay, we say a naturalistic worldview is to say, let's make the best of what you have and just have a nice life, have a good life. Now, you should have a nice life, have a good life. But is that everything? Is that the only reason why we exist? Is death just a bad thing because you stop having a nice life? Or is death a bad thing because it is a revelation of something far deeply wrong within our hearts that we just don't want to admit to? Ecclesiastes chapter 9, Solomon calls himself the preacher, writes these words as he is reflecting on just the meaninglessness of living a life apart from God. He says, but all this I laid to heart, examining it all, how the righteous and the wise and their deeds are in the hand of God. Whether it is love or hate, man does not know, both are before him. It is the same for all, since the same event happens to the righteous and the wicked. So what is this same event? To the good and the evil, to the clean and the unclean, to him who sacrifices and him who does not sacrifice. As the good one is, so is the sinner, and he who swears is as he who shuns an oath. This is an evil in all that is done under the sun, that the same event happens to all. Also, the hearts of the children of man are full of evil, and madness is in their hearts while they live, and after that they go to the dead. That event is death. So all of us experience this, and it is a hard reality. And so you think Abraham here, a man who walked with God, has spent his years with a lot of hope in front of him, even as an old man, right? The guy's 100 years old, and he's still hoping that God is going to do something miraculous, and indeed he does, right? So we have Abraham who's experiencing this, and yet he gets to a point in time, right? We've got just under 4 decades from the birth of Isaac to Abraham experiencing the death of his wife. And so it comes knocking on his door. And it knocks, and it's not avoidable. Now, I say this because as Christian people, we want to live lives that are sober-minded. We don't want to live lives that are just let's have this perpetual pizza party of life and just have fun, have a good time, and then do the, I would say, unthinkable thing and just when it gets to the end of life, just hope nobody notices that you're not here anymore. Right? Mortality is a significant thing, and we would be wise to consider it. Here's what the psalmist says in Psalm 39, O Lord, make me know my end, and what is the measure of my days? Let me know how fleeting I am. Behold, you have made my days a few handbreadths, and my lifetime is as nothing before you. Surely all mankind stands as a mere breath. Surely a man goes about as a shadow. Surely for nothing they are in turmoil. Man heaps up wealth and does not know who will gather. So, as Abraham walks in this world, as Sarah walks in this world, as you and I walk in this world, there is a bit of wise counsel to take, and a bit of wise counsel to consider. What is it? How much time do I reasonably think is left? This doesn't mean that you can mark a day in your calendar. Age 95 is good for me. What the psalmist is saying here is he's saying, you would do well for yourself if you would ask the Lord to give you sober-mindedness and eyes to see that in the grand scheme of things, this space that you and I occupy is very small. And in this small space that is occupied, should we be concerned with certain things? Because the psalmist says here, like, heaps up wealth, not knowing who's going to gather. Okay, estate sales. You have people go in. I've purchased this kind of a helpful reminder for me. A handful of years back, I went to an estate sale, and there was a guy with like all kinds of tools. I was like, I'm going to get some new wrenches. I want to get some wrenches. And on these wrenches, this man had engraved his initials. And he doesn't have them now, and I do. And there will be a day where I won't have them and somebody else does. So is wisdom found in accumulating these types of things? Is wisdom found in simply saying, I'm going to have a fun time, I'm going to make a go at it here and accumulate what I can? Because the psalmist seems to think that it's not a wise idea. It's not a wise idea to just accumulate things, thinking that is the substance of your life, knowing that at the end of all things, you have no idea who's going to actually have your stuff. Right? We would do well to ask the Lord to give us eyes to see soberly the reality of our own mortality. So that being said, Genesis 23, 10 through 16, just passing through. Ephron was sitting among the Hittites, and Ephron the Hittite answered Abraham in the hearing of the Hittites of all who went in at the gate of his city. No, my Lord, hear me. I give you the field, and I give you the cave that is in it in the sight of the sons of my people. I give it to you. Bury your dead. Then Abraham bowed down before the people of the land, and he said to Ephron in the hearing of the people of the land, but if you will hear me, I give the price of the field, accept it from me, that I may bury my dead there. Ephron answered Abraham, my Lord, listen to me, a piece of land worth 400 shekels of silver. What is that between you and me? Bury your dead. Abraham listened to Ephron, and Abraham weighed out for Ephron the silver that he had named in the hearing of the Hittites, 400 shekels of silver, according to the weights current among the merchants. So, while God's redeemed people live in a fallen world, their home can only be in a redeemed and promised world. So why do I attach that to this? It's because what's happening here, there's kind of some like political stuff going on between Abraham and the Hittites. He had been dwelling there, hanging out. They knew him. He was a well-respected guy in this land. And yet, in Abraham's mind, there was something that's very important that's communicated to them, is that he is not in debt to the Hittites. When Abraham is insisting on buying this, it's not like he's saying, oh, I'll pay for my own food. You don't have to worry about it. That's not what's happening here. What's happening here is Abraham is recognizing in front of the Hittites that he will not be in debt to them because the land does not belong to the Hittites. The land belongs to God. All right? If you were tempted to say Abraham, you're kind of right, but you're not. The land belongs to God. Why does it belong to God? Because God is the one who has promised to give it to Abraham. And so what Abraham is doing here is saying, okay, God has given me the resources to do this, and even though it might be kind of nice to, get a free gift of a, free burial plot from these Hittite folks, what he's saying is like, I will not deal with this world as though this world has a claim on me. I'm not going to purchase this land or receive this land in any other way than what suggests that I belong to God, his promises will come to pass, and I'm not going to live as though this world has a claim on my life. So when I say that you live in a fallen world, right, you're doing business here, you're doing things, you're going to work, you're buying things, you're eating food, you're going to restaurants, you're just doing stuff. Christian, do well to consider that this world does not have a claim on your identity, does not have a claim on who you are. If that is marking your life, then you're missing the point. Genesis 13, 14 through 18 remind you of what happened with Abraham, when at this point he's still Abram. He's missing the H in his name there. So what happens with Abraham, and Lot is you have Lot who says, I really like what this world can offer. I really like it. And I'm going to go after that. And Abraham is exhibiting a certain trust in God by saying, I'm going to take what's not that. I'm going to trust God to do what is best for me, to give me what is necessary. I'm going to trust. And so here's what happens. The Lord said to Abram after Lot had separated from him, Lift up your eyes and look from the place where you are, northward and southward and eastward and westward. For all the land that you see, I will give to you and to your offspring forever. I will make your offspring as the dust of the earth, so that if one can count the dust of the earth, your offspring also can be counted. Arise, walk through the length and the breadth of the land, for I will give it to you. So Abram moved his tent and came and settled by the oaks of Mamre, which are at Hebron, and there he built an altar to the Lord. So fun fact, at this point, when Abraham receives this promise that this land will belong to him, he's at this place, the Oaks of Mamre. It's right by the cave of Machpelah. So we have this chunk of time that passes, decades and decades and decades pass, and as Abraham is looking for a burial plot for his wife, here's what he's doing. He's saying, I would like my wife to be buried, and I would like to be buried at the place that will be a constant reminder that God has made promises that he will keep. All right? This is not a coincidence. This is not insignificant. For Abraham to hear at this spot, it says that he moves his tent and he builds an altar to the Lord. What is happening here is he's saying, all right, this is what's going to mark me. I'm not going to be like Lot, and I'm not going to try to secure a good future for myself because I think these people can do what's best for me. He's saying, I'm going to trust God to do what's best for me. So I'm going to pick up my tent and my desire to have people fulfill these different, I'm going to take my tent and I'm going to pitch my tent and then I'm going to build an altar that says the Lord will do what is best. So in Abraham requesting this particular plot of land, it is a direct reminder for all of us to see that God will keep his promises. Hebrews 11, 8 through 10, the author of Hebrews says, by faith Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to a place that he was to receive as an inheritance. Remember that obedience was kind of up and down, but he ultimately goes. And he went out not knowing where he was going. By faith he went to live in the land of promise as in a foreign land, living in tents with Isaac and Jacob, heirs with him of the same promise. For he was looking forward to the city that has foundations, whose designer and builder is God. Now, if you are thinking that a tent seems like a temporary place to live, you would be correct. Okay, it's not like in the ancient Near East tents where this standard thing, everybody just lived in a tent and they're all in a campground together. It's not what's going on everywhere, right? People are building cities. They're building houses out of mud and brick and stone and all the things people build out of in the ancient Near East. Abraham lived in tents. Now, what does this say to us? Does this say to us that Abraham was just poor, so he picked up a tent at the Walmart and go camp out somewhere? That's not what's happening. Abraham recognizes in this kind of sojourning lifestyle that he's not looking to settle down here. Furthermore, he's not even looking to settle down in the land of Canaan ultimately, because what land does he possess of Canaan? Does he go into Canaan and be like, okay, cool, all this stuff is mine, belongs to Abraham, goes to the register of deeds, this is my place, cool, now I own it. That's not what happens. What happens here is you have Abraham, he gets this little tiny plot of land. This little tiny plot of land, and God has made a promise. This whole land will belong to you. So is God not keeping his promise? Is God not keeping his promise that all this land is going to belong to Abraham? Because what you're going to see in the next week is that Abraham will die himself. And he doesn't accumulate a whole lot more property. The author of Hebrews, in saying this to us, is directing our attention to see that Abraham himself recognized that God's promise is going to be fulfilled, not necessarily in him accumulating a space around in this physical fallen world, but that he is, as the author says, looking forward to the city that has foundations, whose designer and builder is God. Right, we have seen the transience of human ingenuity for the past number of months in Genesis. We've seen the Tower of Babel just get utterly the people dispersed. We've seen human ingenuity and sin in Genesis 6 as the flood comes and wipes out humanity and our desire to seek our own way. All right, this is transient. And Abraham says, I don't want transience. I don't want something that's going to pass away. I want something that is going to remain forever. And so even though he buys this little plot of land, he buries Sarah's body in it. This is just a little plug for you. I think burial is a God-honoring practice. Now, people have differences in conviction in this, but I just want to insert a little word about this. This is not a condemnation if somebody seeks cremation, but it is to say I do think that burial is a testimony to the hope of resurrection. Because I think that in Sarah's burial and in Abraham's burial, they're saying, this body has mattered. And so that to destroy this body, to just destroy it utterly, would be to deny the sanctity of the life that God has created here. Now again, this is not a condemnation of cremation. This is a convictional issue. I'm not in any way coming down on that. But I do want you to think that a unique practice among the Jews throughout the Old Testament, a unique practice of Christian people has been to bury. Because there is a hope that God is going to make all things new. And in Sarah's burial, that's what we're seeing here. Exodus chapter 16, 1 through 3, they set out from Elim, as the people have been led out from Egypt. Okay, Pharaoh's given them a really rough time. They're led out from Egypt, and you would think, grateful people, happy people. Good, no more slavery. We're no longer having a bad time. We don't have whips on our backs. We don't have people telling us to make bricks without straw, the things that go on. You think about Charlton Heston and the Ten Commandments. We don't want these bad things happening. Shouldn't we be happy? And here is what Moses records for us. They set out from Elim, and all the congregation of the people of Israel came to the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month, after they had departed from the land of Egypt. So this is fresh, right? This isn't like 30 years ago. This is 15th day of the second month after they had departed from the land of Egypt. It's like a month and a half ago. The whole congregation of the people of Israel grumbled against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness, and the people of Israel said to them, would that we had died. I just think how foolish that is. Would that we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the meat pots and ate bread to the full. For you have brought us out into this wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger. Now, as we see Exodus play out, the Lord's going to provide remarkably for the people. For a very long time, a particular type of food that is unique, manna from heaven. It is going to be this unique thing. God shows a daily provision for the people. And yet what you're seeing here, reflected in the hearts of the Israelites, is to say, I really wanted this world to be my home. I really, really, really wanted Egypt because, Egypt, I know I was a slave, but here's what I had in Egypt. I had the all-you-can-eat, I had the Golden Corral experience, right? And I could just sat by the meat pots and eat bread. I know I was a slave. I know I was regularly beaten and whipped, but you know what? I could eat whatever I wanted to eat, and it was good. This is a problem. This is a big problem for the Israelites because they grumble. They grumble later about not having enough water. God provides water for them. They grumble about a lot of things. And God is so patient with them and kind with them to say, just knock it off. You're missing the point. You are sojourners. Your father, Abraham, was a sojourner. Your father, Isaac, was a sojourner. Your father, Jacob, was a sojourner. Do you not get it? The people of God are to be sojourners. This world cannot be your home. You cannot find your greatest and lasting joy in this world. If you do that, you are going to submit yourself to a lifestyle that is akin to slavery. You will be enslaved to things that are going to perish with use. You are going to be enslaved to things that are going to take you and abuse you and use you. But if you recognize the uniqueness of belonging to the God who is, the God who has made a promise of a world that will be restored one day, then you can live with a freedom that says, I don't need to be concerned with meat pots and bread. God will take care of me. He'll give me food that I need. He'll take care of me. But what I know about my identity is I can't be the same as I was before this God had taken me to be his. I just can't be that. This fallen world can't be home. The author of Hebrews says here, as he's speaking to the church, now he says, here we have no lasting city, but we seek the city that is to come. By all means, do good in this world. By all means, do good. By all means, enjoy what God has created, right? The Apostle Paul himself says that what God has created is to be received with thanksgiving, and it's good to receive with thanksgiving, to honor and glorify God with it. But don't let that get in the way of the reality for you that this world is not the place you live for. You don't do that. It's very easy for us to live day in and day out thinking, okay, what am I going to do today? And what am I going to do tomorrow? How am I going to do this for myself? And James is, James confronts people with that mentality. He says, come now. You who say, we're going to go to this place and do business, we're going to do this place and do business, we're going to do all these things, we're going to get this stuff for ourselves. And James says, just, you are a vapor. You're a vapor. He said, if you're thinking rightly, just think, if the Lord wills, we're going to do such and such a thing. Because what you should be concerned about, Christian, above all things, is that God's kingdom comes and his will is done here on earth as it is in heaven. Don't get caught up in the type of enslavement to a world that is fallen and failing like the Israelites did. So, let's give you a much better place to settle. Sounds like a good thing. Let's go to a much better place. We don't want a failing, fallen world. We want a better place. After this, Abraham buried Sarah, his wife, in the cave of the field of Machpelah, east of Mamre, that is Hebron, in the land of Canaan. The field and the cave that is in it were made over to Abraham as property for a burying place by the Hittites. So the Christian hope is built on the promises of God to one day restore full fellowship with his people in a world free from sin and death. One of those beautiful things that you'll see in the entire Bible. There's a practice, there's a discipline in the field of theology that we do called biblical theology. You look for themes, big themes in the Bible that kind of tie all things together. And there is this theme, the dwelling place of God. In the dwelling place of God, you see what happens at the beginning. God creates man, and he creates woman, and he creates us to dwell in his presence free from sin. And in the book of Revelation, what you find is John wraps these things up for us in literary form. God gives him a vision saying, here's what you should look forward to. There's going to be a day when the dwelling place of God is again going to be with man. That's what you live for. You live because you will suffer in this world. You've experienced suffering. And however hard you try to make things better, you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. You don't know what's going to happen in a year. You have no idea. But what you can be certain of is that there is a world to be lived for that will never fail. There's a promise made by a God who keeps his promises, like he did to Abraham, as he did to Sarah. There's a promise that there will one day be a dwelling of God again with man. Remember Genesis 23:4, I'm a sojourner and foreigner among you. Give me property among you for burying place, that I may bury my dead out of my sight. How often, Christian, do you and I think that we are sojourners? How often do you and I think about this? I will put another plug for reading a book, and you will tell me, Chris, why are you doing this? I've had people who have said, I finally bought the book. Okay, good. Everybody should buy the book. Read The Pilgrim's Progress. Please read it. Please read it. And if you can't read it, have somebody read it to you. If you'd like me to read it to you, say, Chris, I'll come to your office. Read the book to me. I'll happily read it to you. Okay? Do text to speech. I don't care. Read it. Why? Because John Bunyan, who wrote it, was a man who knew what it was to live as a sojourner. He had every reason. He was imprisoned for preaching the gospel, and that was the only reason he was imprisoned. He was a God-honoring man. 400 years ago, he's imprisoned for preaching the gospel, and at any point he could have said, I will acquiesce, and I will preach the state religion. I will preach the Anglican religion as controlled and dictated by the King of England. I'll do that. And then he would have been out of prison, see his family. He had a blind daughter. His first child was blind. He had other kids. He had a wife who was 10, 11 years younger than him, taking care of things at home as a teenager, effectively. At any point, he could have just said, no, not going to do it anymore. Time to have a happy life. And so he says, there's something more valuable. There's something much more valuable than having a happy life. Much more valuable is having a God-honoring life. What is much more valuable is to say at the end of your earthly course, as the Apostle Paul did, I've finished the race, right? I've kept the faith. That's a much more valuable thing for you to be able to say at the end of all things. So he writes The Pilgrim's Progress, and in this book you see this man, Christian. And throughout, he's just confronted with trial after trial, and not just trials of suffering and hardship, but trials of prosperity. And as he goes along his way, he tells everybody he meets, I'm just going to the celestial city. I'm not camping out here. I came from the city of destruction. And I'm going to the celestial city. I'm going there. Everything that happens in between is just this, it is an ellipsis. It's a hyphen. This is not the point. It's not the end. I am looking for a city that has foundations, whose builder and designer is God. I'm looking for that. I'm living for that. And that's what sojourners do. You're not home, Christian. Hebrews 11, 13 through 16, these all died in faith, not having received the things promised, but having seen them and greeted them from afar, and having acknowledged that they were strangers and exiles on the earth. This is good for you, Christian. Acknowledge you are a stranger and exile on this earth. On a fallen world, your redeemed self, this is not home. For people who speak thus make it clear that they are seeking a homeland. If they had been thinking of that land from which they had gone out, who have had opportunity to return. But as it is, they desire a better country that is a heavenly one. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared for them a city. And then he wraps up this section by saying, all these, he's talking about the fathers, the patriarchs, the prophets, all of those who had gone before. He says, all these, though commended through their faith, did not receive what was promised, since God had provided something better for us, that apart from us, they should not be made perfect, right? The whole point of the Old Testament was not to be summed up in, well, you got the land of Canaan finally. Good for you. That wasn't the whole point. The whole point was, as the author of Hebrews says, that Christ has come, and Christ is to be had. So in John chapter 8, Jesus interacts with the Jewish leaders who had camped out on this, saying, we are sons of Abraham, and we've got our place, and we're going to get our place. Right? They had hoped that the Messiah to come would throw off earthly powers and give them the land finally. And Jesus interacts with them in this way. The Jews answered him, are we not right in saying that you are a Samaritan and have a demon? So they're throwing major shade at him here. Jesus answered, I do not have a demon, but I honor my Father, and you dishonor me. Yet I do not seek my own glory. There is one who seeks it, and he is the judge. Truly, truly, I say to you, if anyone keeps my word, he will never see death. That sounds like a good thing. The Jews said to him, now we know that you have a demon. Abraham died, as did the prophets, yet you say, if anyone keeps my word, he will never taste death. Are you greater than our father Abraham, who died? And the prophets died? Who do you make yourself out to be? Jesus answered, if I glorify myself, my glory is nothing. It is my Father who glorifies me, of whom you say he is our God. But you have not known him. I know him. If I were to say that I do not know him, I would be a liar like you, but I do know him, and I keep his word. Your father Abraham rejoiced that he would see my day. He saw it and was glad. So the Jews said to him, you are not yet 50 years old, and have you seen Abraham? Jesus said to them, truly, truly, I say to you, before Abraham was, I am. So as the author of Hebrews is helping people see, what is the point? What is the point of everything? It's not an earthly home. The whole point of everything is not having a good experience, right? In Hebrews 11, you read a little further back from where we finished up there, he's talking about people who are sawn in two. Not a fun experience. And yet that belonged to the people of God. So it cannot be, Christian, that your hope is here. Your hope is not here. Your hope is bound up in Christ, because Jesus enters this world, and he enters this world so that the promises made be fulfilled in him. And ultimately it is this, that in him, people from every tribe, language, people, and nation might be reconciled to God by the perfect life he lives in the place of sinners and the death that he offers on behalf of his people, so that if you will have him, you will never die. Your body will die. But even that will be raised one day. But you, Christian, will not die, because you are seeking a heavenly city, an abiding one. It's not here. And yet there will be one day where a new heavens and a new earth, where Sarah and Abraham and all the people of God from ages past will be raised from the dead. And you, Christian, will be raised from the dead. And you will dwell with the God who has made a promise that he will be your God and you will be his. That is what you live for. This world is not your home.